Okay, we've done this song and dance before. I've looked at seasons 1 to 4 and I think 9 and 10 of Death Battle and ranked them on what episodes are the most and least fair. This is not a series about critiquing the accuracy of Death Battle. Anyone who claims to be the utmost expert on every character on Death Battle is a massive wielder of the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is instead a series about how Death Battle present information and by their own logic, what episodes were the closest or most unfair. From the closest episodes that really deserve to be called an extremely close matchup, to the one-sided stomps either intentionally or because they failed to convey certain closeness in a matchup. This is every Death Battle episode from 2024 and 2025 ranked from closest to stompiest according to Death Battle's own logic. But first, how about an ad read?
I've come to make an announcement. Buy G Fuel today. What? G Fuel is your all-in-one plant-based energy formula. Get a load of this. It has 0 carbs, calories, or sugars. Shut up, nerd. Oh ho 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 ho. Metal? Show him what happens when you drink G Fuel with all of its antioxidants and caffeine. It's too G Fuel. Oh! Metal Sonic is wise enough to drink it responsibly, like all should. Unless they're age of the 18, then they shouldn't. Right, Sage? G Fuel time. What the what? This is one of the 50 flavors of G Fuel available in tubs or cans. What? He had G Fuel this whole time? It's not enough. I am a big fan of this. Ah! Sage, the G Fuel egg. Ah! Huh? How? I entered the link in the description and use code BLOODRIGHT for 20% off my order. That gives me way more G Fuel than you!
You think it's weird that the whole ad read was done with an episode from last year?
Where are the episodes from last year now?
Where does the time go?
How the bloody hell should I know? So we scaled a Simone for being in the same skit as him, right?
Yeah, of course!
That was a stupid ad read. Anyway, next. Number 16, Dante vs. Clive. Both Dante and Clive were placed at Universal, with various degrees of upscaling the episode doesn't really get into. Speed was placed at Clive 3 times faster, roughly, but with both able to boost speed to an equal degree, while also having equal abilities and resistances to each other's abilities. So in the end, it comes down to, as they put it, a 6-minute time limit for Dante, and a tens of minutes time limit for Clive, with Clive able to one-shot the moment Dante goes down into base form. In other words, the only way to measure the difference is to say minimum Clive can keep going for 20 minutes, so he lasts 3.3 times longer than Dante, so he has a 3.3 repeating times time limit advantage. I mean, what else am I supposed to do? They did genuinely put them equal and made it come across as very close, which is appreciated. Number 15, Bowser vs. Eggman. Bowser vs. Eggman has a lot going on, so we can separate this into various different gaps. First, they compare Bowser's punch to the Death Egg robot, 125 teratons versus 4 kilotons, or a 31.25 billion times advantage in Bowser's favor. They then compare Bowser directly to the Death Egg. The Death Egg was placed at star level, and Bowser was placed at constellation level, so vaguely stronger for Bowser. They then compare the black hole feats, in which Bowser's black hole is 158 times larger and more powerful. And as for speed, the analysis puts Bowser at 489 quadrillion times the speed of light, and Eggman at 73 quadrillion, making Bowser 6.6 times faster. At their peak though, Bowser was put at Universal, while Eggman is Vega. The Chaos Emeralds are put at likely stronger than a Grand Star, due to scaling to Solaris, which they on-screen put as consuming all existing timelines. Death Battle didn't themselves give a number for how many timelines that is. We can assume at least 2 though. However, the corner box puts the both with Pure Hearts and Time Eater at infinite multiversal, so the attack power is pretty equal. So the gap would be a 6.6 times speed gap, which is pretty small. Bowser also took every other advantage. All Eggman had was that he's academically smarter, and I don't think I have to tell you that being able to calculate 6 to the power of 2 trillion multiplied by 5 divided by 0.3231 within 3 seconds does not help you win a fist fight at all. So I'm happy to call this one of the closest episodes of the 16 being looked at today, with what I'll list at a 6.6 times difference via speed. They do imply incalculable speed, but like, that's just stupid. Dimensional manipulation. What does that even mean here? Come on, that's so vague. Number 14, Kratos vs. Asura. This is controversial to the masses, but by DB's own logic, fairly clear cut. There's nothing fancy or weird going on here. Asura was put at 2.58 quadrillion times the speed of light, 1.05 times faster than Kratos scaling to the 2.45 quadrillion times the speed of light shockwaves. But Asura destroying Chakravartin only got to 91,302 times universal, while Kratos scaling to the lowballed Ragnarok feat got to 9,919,749 times universal, almost 100 times greater. I mean, that's what Boomstick says, but almost 100 times greater is a very weird way to word 108.64766 times greater. Not a huge gap by Death Battle's own standards, but it is a pretty clean stat stomp that doesn't pussyfoot around much. Number 13, Omni-Man vs Bardock. This one hit us early with a surprise result that very few expected. Thanks, Sundisk. Anyway, this episode did give Bardock a few advantages. He was given versatility by virtue of him having ranged attacks, even though they later say Omni-Man's atoms are extremely versatile and how they can adapt to any kind of trauma. He also got a speed advantage, with his high-end scaling of 475 trillion times the speed of light, outpacing Omni-Man's best given scaling of 34 trillion times the speed of light in this corner box, putting Bardock at 13.97 times faster. However, the power made that kind of irrelevant. The absolute highest they give Bardock is a high-end upscale of 12.8 quetatons. To be clear, we have to ignore this whole deal. This number assumes Super Saiyan is a 50 times multiplier on top of Great Ape, and not over base form, which is neither true nor what they say. They do put a 10 times multiplier over base Bardock in this corner box as a different thing, but it's made fairly clear that Super Saiyan is a different continuity. It makes no sense to say that Super Saiyan is a 50 times multiplier on a power boost from a different version of Bardock. This would put Bardock's top power at 50 times that Vegeta high-end, or 640 quetatons of TNT. Omni-Man's high-end meanwhile was put at 120,000 quetatons with the Sun Disk. Even his low-end is 8,641 quetatons. The simple editing mistake they made here with the numbers, remember they're only ever shown on screen, never said out loud, makes Bardock look stronger than he is, but in actuality, the best case scenario he's looking at is Omni-Man being 13.5 times stronger, which amusingly lines up very well with the speed advantage Bardock has. The worst case scenario for Bardock, and what we're using here, remember Death Battle love to push, they use characters at their best, so high end should be the norm, puts Omni-Man at 187.5 times more powerful than Bardock. A not massive blowout number by Death Battle standards, but solid enough gap to make this a very clear-cut outcome. Numbers aren't everything, except when the number makes one guy a gerbil and the other guy a lion. Number, is it 12 now? Spider-Man vs Izuku Midoriya. Fun fact, Deku is the second returner after Captain Marvel to get significantly weaker on their second coming around. Something very funny to consider given that in the same year and only 4 episodes ago, Shigaraki was directly scaled to Deku's own feat that Deku didn't even get to use himself in the same year. Anyway, Miles was put at 15.03 megatons of TNT, while Deku was placed at nothing until the conclusion bothered to include the calc at 362 gigatons of TNT, placing Deku at 24,085.16 times more powerful than Miles. If you're generous and include the 546 megaton feat for the vibranium suit Miles could get, Deku would still be 663 times stronger. But I can't include that because while that is technically a high end, they just kinda go and say that Miles doesn't scale flat out, so 24,000 times gap it is. If you're wondering, the gap between Deku here and Deku in Deku vs Asta is 217.9 times in favor of his first episode, which is probably not as bad as Captain Marvel going down from star level to planet level. Number 11, Shigaraki vs Mahito. Mahito vs Shigaraki is a very simple one. Shigaraki was put at 78.9 teratons of TNT and Mahito at 832 kilotons of TNT, a stat gap of 96,021,634.615 times. I guess to make the segment slightly more interesting, Shigaraki was put at light speed and Mahito at Mach 932, 937.8 times faster. They oddly say that Shigaraki was thousands of times faster, but I don't even know how you get that wrong. They put on screen the Mach speed of light. Obviously 1,000 times 932 is 932,000, and that is definitely not 932,000 on screen over there, let alone the 1.8 million times the speed of sound you'd need to barely be thousands of times faster. Weird. Number 10, Ruby vs Maka. It's simple. Ruby was calced at 4.3 kilotons in this corner box, but they get generous in the conclusion and scale her durability to 366 kilotons. This isn't an attack power thing, but let's use the higher number anyway. Maka's own durability was put at 2.7 petatons of TNT. Unlike Ruby, she was able to match power with the guy hitting her instead of just being purely hypothetical. This placed Maka at 8,035,714,285.71 times more powerful, a solid lead. There's very little else to say. Speed is pulling relatively even, and Maka's power is just all outclass Ruby, so all Ruby had was skill. And skill does matter in a fight, but you're not going to win on skill alone if you're fighting an angry white rhinoceros with a log of dog shit as your weapon. Number 9, Master Chief vs Doomslayer. Some people will be confused why this isn't higher, being as it is the iconic stomp of the season. Some others will be confused that it wasn't put lower because they remember the 30 gigaton versus 30 megaton comparison. But it'll probably be relatively fitting for people who think that he just stomps Chief out of vibe. But actually, it's pretty fucking crazy what Death Battle snuck in there. At the end of this episode, they try to play off Doomslayer having a 30 gigaton crucible that's about 1,000 times stronger than Chief's highly situational shield. Which, mind you, I'm being very generous allowing their shield to count for Chief's stats, because they golden tree the fucking thing in the conclusion, and say that Chief is nowhere near that strong unless Cortana can siphon power from the Forerunner ship that cannot easily be replicated. Anyway, in the analysis they casually drop that Doomslayer killed Davoth, who, quote, created all of existence, unquote. In other words, universal scaling versus charitably 30 megatons of TNT. Thus, Doomslayer was comfortably put at 2.25066667 times 10 to the power of 75 times more powerful, or 2.25 quadrivigintillion times stronger. That gap is so big that I could not possibly explain it to you. It is a number that is only one order of magnitude smaller than SpongeBob's crazy feat in SpongeBob vs Aquaman. Mind you, this is the low end of Doomslayer's advantage, because considering they say the 30 megaton feat is not something Chief can actually replicate normally, Chief would actually get much lower. In fact, the gap between Chief and Slayer, if you don't count the shield, is one after the next one. So keep that in mind, we'll get back to it after. Number 8, Blade vs Buffy. This one's just kinda sad to compare. In raw physical stats, Blade was given the same 15.03 megaton scaling that Spider-Man got earlier in the year, while Buffy was placed at 611.67 gigatons from scaling to a monster that could destroy London based. This places Buffy at 40,696 times more powerful in raw stats. That's nothing when you compare the weapon scaling. While there are cosmic beings Blade is compared to throughout, the best any of these get to scale to Blade is that the breathing gun can hurt Cosmic Ghost Rider, who they say was claimed to be able to survive star-melting attacks. Buffy was scaled to Silas, who consumes universes. Using the high end of star level, which I think is being generous, Buffy's scythe is 96.65 sextillion times more powerful than the breathing gun. Hold on, sextillion? That's smaller than quadrivigintillion, some of you is thinking? However, that's because there's a catch to this. They go in on how Blade's weapons are all hard countered by Buffy's resistances, including the breathing gun, which they say does not work on holy beings, and Buffy being a holy being may just resist it completely. They say possibly, but it seems pretty fucking blatant to me. If it doesn't work on holy beings, it won't work on an angel. This means that the breathing gun is effectively worthless in the matchup, so instead we have to compare the scythe to the next best scaling that Blade got, 15 megatons, because they gave no context for Zerathos within the episode itself. That means effectively that Buffy with her weaponry is 4.492 quadrivigintillion times more powerful than anything Blade can do, as none of his weapons were placed above his own given stats except for the one that doesn't work on Buffy. That is kinda sad. I will note that if you allow death battles to be consistent between one another, this is a case where Blade would get omniversal and just kinda win, because they didn't really say anything about the Zerathos thing. But letting death battles be comparable with one another can lead to a lot of weirdness, like Deku being weaker than Shigaraki because Shigaraki scaled to Deku. Number 7, Joker vs Giorno. There is an extremely funny timeline where they say this episode is wrong by its own logic, because they say the stands can turn fiction into reality, giving stands a reality over fiction outversal scaling that goes beyond what they gave Joker. That's obviously not what they meant though, so let's kill Giorno. Using only the analysis, it kind of could come off like Giorno actually should have won. They specifically mentioned King Crimson erasing the universe, that's literally how they were the time manipulation, while Joker only got given nebula-sized explosion until the conclusion. But the conclusion clears up what they meant. They just really stupidly worded Giorno only resisting universe-level hacks, while Joker has universe-level attack power. They also say Joker is millions of times faster, but I don't think I should tell you that 8 billion is a bigger number than 8 million. So where do they actually put them? Well, Giorno destroys a car, and Joker is beating universe busters. Oh dear. So how much is destroying a car? Well, it's certainly above what a human can do, so it's above athletic and probably above street tier. But it's also not equal to blowing up an entire building, it's just a car, so war level against Universal. War level at its high end is 0.05 tons of TNT. Universal at its, well, only end, because once you get above it you stop being able to have measurements in joules as such, would be a solid 1.3504 times 10 to the power of 83 times more powerful. Or to use one of them fancy English words that hold basically no meaning to you, 135 sexvigintillion times more powerful. A number so absurdly impossible to comprehend that I'm not even going to try. And no, Golden Experience Requiem doesn't counter that, they just outright say the Joker's almighty attacks would have no issue, so, and he hard counters any of Requiem's options that could actually finish the fight, so it just does nothing. The only way Joker could lose this is if he literally does nothing and lets Giorno hit him 135 sexvigintillion times, while actively choosing not to use any of his capacity to recover from that. Giorno got cooked like crazy, and yes, this is the same gap that Master Chief vs Doomslayer would have if you took the shield away. Number 6, Simone vs Kyle. Simone vs Kyle is an odd one. You can interpret what they say in a lot of ways, and I have seen all sorts of interpretations, because this isn't a matter of objective fact as much as what you accept. In my opinion though, the conclusion is very oddly worded. They say strength doesn't matter, but then they go into transcendencies, which, if you didn't know, is just a fancy way for versus debaters to extend attack power beyond calculations. Death Battle explicitly state, I quote, "Each numbered dimension infinitely surpasses the one below it." This tells us that not only are they running on those rules, but they now accept those rules in Death Battle. They've never made any sort of specific, it wasn't the specific thing of like, that's how much it is in this franchise. They say it flat out. In base form, Kyle is 1.3 times infinitely superior to pre-dimensional labyrinth absorption Simone, with DC at its best having a larger overall cosmology that they do not scale Kyle to. At their peak, they cap both characters out at a level that sees reality as fiction. In other words, what people have relatively recently started calling the new standard for Outerversal. So stats are equal, right? Why is it up here? Because of this line. Simone might start weaker, but his peak will always transcend Kyle's. They are saying that with Simone's ability to constantly get stronger, he will always be at least one order of infinity more powerful than wherever Kyle gets. Combined with him having full control over this power for seemingly forever, while Kyle has limited control over similar power for a comparatively shorter span of time. I have heard some say that they gave Kyle no win con, that's not actually true though. Kyle can't kill Simone at an informational level, but they go out of their way to make clear that Simone could not regenerate like that forever. It's a week-long regeneration. So if Kyle somehow managed to hold on to that power and keep it in control for that long, Simone will no longer have the capacity to regenerate on that scale and can now be killed. But like you could also argue that because they say that Kyle can't kill Simone at that level, that maybe he would never touch that regeneration, and so Simone wouldn't need to worry. But like they bring up the fact that it lasts for only a week, which would imply that after a week, Simone's regeneration would stop being on that level, even though Kyle isn't killing him on that level. It's really strangely worded, honestly. It heavily implies that they believe that Simone will eventually no longer be able to regenerate on that level when fighting Kyle if Kyle survived long enough. Oh, it's so weird. But at the end of the day, he is at his peak, one infinite order of magnitude more powerful than Kyle, as well as having better regeneration for a longer time, and they go out of their way to specify that Simone can bypass Kyle's own regeneration. So Simone kind of thrashed Kyle here. Kyle could only win with a maybe. Simone will always be infinitely transcendently stronger, because they kind of slapped the no limits fallacy on him, and said this may be the limit he's provably reached, but because he's broken limits before, he'll just break another one and transcend Kyle, even though he's never done that to Kyle's level. Yeah. Number 5, Ash vs Yugi. Ash vs Yugi had a lot of monsters, and a lot of ways to compare things. You could compare island level feats from lower tier Pokemon to the universal feats from the mid tier duel monsters. You compare the black holes they scale to. If you're wondering, Dark Hole Dragon's black hole is 21 quintillion times more powerful than Gardevoir's. The universal feats compared to that black hole would still be like decillion times, like, maybe. It would be a huge gap. But it's really not worth calculating, because calculations don't really apply here. They put Ash at he maybe scales to Dialga's Roar of Time, which is the power of time, likely 4D. They don't say 4D, but they imply it's above Sol Galeo lighting up the universe, which they really want you to believe is universe level. But Herakti is placed at infinite multiversal at minimum, with his corner box basically saying that Herakti also scales to 2-dimensionally transcendent spaces that surpass Pokemon's cosmology. The most generous interpretation that this episode could give you puts Yugi at 6-dimensional and Ash at best at 4-dimensional, but probably just 3-dimensional, meaning Yugi was solidly at least 2 orders of magnitude more powerful than Ash. It's very hard to choose between this or Simone vs Kyle. Is a gap of Outerversal level 2 versus Outerversal level 1 higher than a gap between Dimensional level 6 versus Dimensional level 4? I don't know. But I'll put it like this, Kyle not only starts out stronger according to them and has relatively even powers, but he's also only 1 Transcendency lower. Relatively, this places Yugi 2 Transcendencies higher, and they go into detail about how his cards just outclass Ash, and that Ash really doesn't have anything on a Tem beyond having more experience. Very much up to interpretation, especially as Kyle vs. Simone gives explicit mention of infinite superiority, but the words dimensionally transcendent tell me that that was at least the intention of this. Debate it amongst yourselves, I'm just ranking this a tiny bit higher. Number 4, Wile E Coyote vs. Tomcat. If this episode didn't come out after Simon vs. Kyle, I wouldn't have to consider reality over fiction outerversal bullshit, but Tom vs. Wile E seemingly puts both at universal. But not really. Tom was put at 3 times universal in this corner box, while Wile E was put at, let's see, infinitely universal and infinite timelines in an extra universe, and all via scaling to something that destroyed a universe that is transcendently superior to Looney Tunes by killing the animator and the animator's universe. Basically, Wile E was put bare minimum at transcendently superior, while Tom was not. Both can break into reality, but only Wile E can destroy reality. At maximum, Wile E was put at outerversal via reality over fiction, and Tom was not. Both were put at immeasurable, though Tom only through this corner box that the conclusion conveniently ignores, but Wile E also starts with the Looney DNA Dissolver, which they openly state is the only thing that can actually end the fight. So Tom not only is infinitely weaker and at best equal in speed, but he can only win by taking Wile E's gun and shooting him with it. They also go out of their way to say that the rules of the animation wouldn't actually affect Wile E, so the story isn't going to be manipulating things so that Wile E loses. But I don't see how that matters when they also say that Wile E can manipulate the plot. I didn't expect it to go this way, but somehow fucking Wile E versus Tom was one of the biggest stomps of the year. Number 3, well, so begins the streak of the biggest stomps. Not because of big number, but because 3 episodes in this lineup, at least, depending on how you take Simo vs. Kyle, give the loser literally no win con. That is, literally no way to win the fight. So, in theory, if Joker did literally nothing, lay down, and allow Giorno to hit him 6 vigintillion times, in theory, purely in theory, Giorno could win. You could probably calculate the amount of time it would take to do that at light speed, and Giorno would never get there before he dies of old age. But fucking Golden Experience Requiem ignores time, so I don't know how that applies. Who cares? In theory, with infinite time, Giorno could actually win. These are episodes where, according to Death Battle, even with infinite time and their opponent doing nothing, they would still never win. It's hard to measure how big a stomp these are, but we will do so via how big the stat gap is. Kind of. The better the loser compares in stats, the closer we'll consider the episode. If you have 2 matchups where a guy can't win, but in one of them the loser is 10 times stronger, and the other the loser is 10 times weaker, the closer one is the one where the loser is 10 times stronger, because at least they can throttle the winner around. You might not agree with that, but too bad, it's my video. Bunch these all together if you want, and just say that Joker Giorno is the biggest stomp by numerical matters, and the rest is all just versus brain rot bullshit, which they are. Even though with Kyle vs. Simo, that is just how those franchises work. DC's bullshit with like Mr. Mixie is like probably why we have dimensional scaling bullshit. Yeah, fuck that guy. As you may have noticed, Ghost Rider vs. Spawn is the closest of these literal no-win con stomps. Fairly simple, yes, Ghost Rider can't win, his powers are all useless, but he is way stronger. Now, Ghost Rider's speed was put at flying to Asgard, the corner box knows this is an infinite distance away in a higher universe, and his power was put at threatening the entire Omniverse, infinite multiverse level destruction. Spawn was put at flying so fast he breaks through time as a concept, which actually might put him as like faster or just equal depending on how you take it, His power though was put at infinitely sized universal scaling. The conclusion, even in a corner box, puts it as Spawn being able to affect infinite timelines and bulk spaces, but Zerathos had infinite multiverses, infinite timelines, and higher dimensions, transcendent realms, and bulk spaces. But Spawn literally cannot be killed by Zerathos, and he has a ton of hack-based win cons. So, that said, they give one win con for Spawn that I think is kind of dumb. They say that he could pen and stare Zerathos back, but their example of a Ghost Rider being beaten by the pen and stare is noted in the analysis to be Danny overpowering him, which implies that it requires greater power than the user to beat them. Regardless, Spawn can't lose this fight even though stats aren't close, so this is the quote-unquote closest of the literally can't lose tiers, followed by number 2, Hulk vs. Godzilla. This is a little less close. It's so weird to say that, because what I'm about to say is both Hulk and Godzilla were placed at reality over fiction, similar to Simone vs. Kyle, but without the part where one will always be stronger than the other, which means that stat-wise, they're equal. Normally, equal stats would be closer. This is just a weird situation where equal stats is not closer. It's so strange. The interesting thing is, they say that neither of them can kill the other. Hulk's respawn point is too transcendent for Godzilla to reach, while Godzilla is just too hard to kill even if Hulk could hit him, with Hulk only winning because Banner has the capacity to banish Godzilla and end the fight. So Godzilla had no win con, technically neither did Hulk. Banner just had a way to end the fight for some time in some regard. It's a hard one to place because arguably even by their own logic, this should be considered a draw, as all Banner can do is delay things, but they do mention in corner boxes how Hulk can destroy stuff that's beyond Ultima and possibly kill him directly, so reasonably I say this is a battle where Hulk has a win con, but stats are borderline even. With the corner boxes, I think you could argue that they kind of just flat out say Hulk could punch Ultima to death. It's not the biggest stop on the list, but it's another one where the loser can't do anything to win. There is one more that's a bigger stomp though, and that's number 1, Fall Guys. Are you kidding me? You're fucking kidding me. This is the biggest stomp. Are you serious? Okay, so uniquely, not only did the loser of Among Us Fall Guys have no win con, they also had a massive stat disadvantage. It's hard to measure this, as they only give us Among Us attack power and not Fall Guys. Among Us is given 10 nonillions of tons for this planet split, but we see 2 planets get obliterated, so based on what they say, the total output is 20 nonillion tons. This third one also gets hit in the back, but it seems to have bitches because it just tanked that shit. Fall Guys was put at Survive the Big Bang, that is 3.3 septicillion times in favor of the Fall Guys, which on its own would be a top tier stomp. However, there's then one other thing, and I don't mean the 281 quadrillion times speed advantage. No, they just say that only the Fall Guys could ensure their foe stays dead. So, Among Us had no way to win. They had no way to ensure the Fall Guys stayed dead, and especially because the Among Us method of coming back to life is to become a ghost that can't do anything, while death battles basically just say the Fall Guys decide to live again. It's a huge gap, and the loser had no win con, making this a pretty open and shut insane stomp, and maybe the biggest stomp death battles ever done by their own logic. And that's that one. That's the video. I don't even know what to say, man. I'm just like, we have like the biggest numerical stomp, and it's like number 8. It's like halfway down the list. Yeah, so that's that. Let me know if you want me to get back to like doing season 5, 6, 7, 8. And getting those done and having like a full tier list of them for you. I do have like a list of where everyone, like how everyone got stomped, but let me know if you want to see that. I'll maybe get to it. For now, that's that video. I will see you another time. Take care, fellas. And that would be that. I'm gonna make this quick because I have incredibly bad. That's not what I was meant to say. I have intense muscle pain in my right arm today. I slept on my arm the whole day, the whole night, and I did a bunch of fucking gardening the day prior. So that wasn't very wise of me. But yeah, I don't want to stay here in the fucking study where I do all my shit any longer than I have to. I would like to just relax today. But yeah, thank you for watching. This is the first video of 2026. Happy New Year, everyone. Yeah, I don't know how much more I'll get out in January. A couple more videos, hopefully one really big one in particular. But yeah, I have stuff to do this year. Tell me what you thought below. I mean, I guess it's not really a matter of like me acting like I'm even right about any of this, because there is a very big point in this video where like halfway through it becomes less a matter of like, here are the numbers, and more a matter of let me make up just explain some shit in a way that makes sense to me, even if it don't make sense to you. As I saw a lot of people saying that Simo and Kyle would be the biggest stomp, and you know what, I do understand the logic there, but it to me it's a case of like, you can argue that Tom has no win con against Wile E, but they don't ever say that. Like, they never imply that or state that. They just say, I mean, I guess he doesn't, but they just say that he could use the DNA gun. You know, they even show that, like in the fight, it could be used against Wile E. I do definitely think you could reasonably argue that maybe Wile E Tom is the biggest stomp, because you'd be like, well, Wile E has the one weapon that can do it, so, you know, like, that's completely reasonable to argue. I would not necessarily disagree. I just think when Death Battle is so explicit about, yeah, this character won because they can't be killed by the other, that's where it kind of goes to a point of, okay, yeah, that is, by their intention, a bigger stomp than basically anything else. Or at least by, like, how they decided to approach and explain it. Anyway, yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. Probably get some more videos talking about stuff in 2025 out. That ranking of every transformation 2025, you're goddamn right, that's gonna happen. So I'll see you for that. Thank you to everyone scrolling by right now. You're all legends. Supporting me on Patreon, thank you. If you want to support me on Patreon, you get access to videos like this early. You can talk to me on my Patreon only Discord, and you made me say stupid stuff, which is what they're going to do now. So let's see what they got for me.
Focus PhD!
I am not translating something into Spanish and saying it just right now. Nice cat, I guess. Yeah. Don't even joke, lad.
Who dares? Rome! How did he find us? How?
There is an interesting tracking device on Earth called a telephone book.
Okay, yeah, it's another cat. Yep, more cats. Yep, more cats. It's fucking same. Up, yep, more cats. Oh my god, more cats. Okay. Going to pronounce all these cats or going to review them? I'm not going to review a cat. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. Half that was cat posting. Okay. Thank you all for watching. Have a good one. I'll figure out what's happening next, I guess.